Okay, so today I've got some Tennis World Tour 2 gameplay. And for those of you who don't know, this is a tennis game, as you should probably be able to tell from the title. This was a free game for PlayStation Plus users in August 2021, and that's the whole reason that I'm playing it. That's the only reason I'm playing it. It was free. And so I decided to download it, give it a try, see how it was. And the way that I really want to structure this video is I want to talk about my feelings on the game and just tell you what I thought about it, and then also just sort of show off this gameplay a little bit. This is an online match that I played where I was Federer and the other guy was Nadal, and I'll let you watch it, but I ended up winning, and it was a really good match. So I wanted to show that off a little bit, and I have sort of cut out some of the little stutters and stuff in the gameplay between points. There's just sort of this hang up that happens every play. So um, this is probably a little better than you should expect if you do play the game. But anyway, let's get into it. My thoughts on this game are that for a free game, it was great. I don't know that I would have wanted to pay $60 or $70 for this, but for a free game, I was pretty happy with it. I think that this is this is probably one of the better tennis games I have played in life. I remember Top Spin 3 back in the day was a pretty good game, I would have to say, but since then I don't know that I've really played much tennis games except for Mario Tennis Aces and the Switch, which I'm not a huge fan of. Um, that being said, I'm not saying that this game is perfect because it absolutely is not perfect. I think a lot of times you can struggle with the movement. The movement is just sort of weird a little bit. It's sort of hard to convince your player to do what you're trying to get him to do. And I think that it's a very repetitive game. The gameplay is very repetitive, and I think that's partly because it's just so tough to recreate the feel of a real tennis match in a game. It's just so difficult. Because if you've ever played tennis, you know that it's not. I mean, yes, it can get repetitive, but every single shot, you're trying to do something very specific with every single shot. And I think in the game, it wasn't necessarily captured that well. And I don't think that reflects on the developers. I just think that it's a difficult thing to do. I think that there is a very big gameplay loop. I think you maybe would call it in the career mode of this game, but I think that it is so repetitive that it can get painful at times. The AI is just very. They don't change. They do everything the same over and over and over again, and as a result, it is such a repetitive game when you're talking about the career mode. And that's a problem if, like me, you're going for the platinum in the game, the platinum trophy. A lot of there are some difficult trophies, but there is one specifically where you have to buy all equipment in the game, which is just a massive grind. You have to get all these coins, and really the best way to get the coins is to play career matches. So you play over and over again. You play these very repetitive career matches, and it can get tough. I will say I've played a game from these developers in the past. It's Big Ant Studios, and I'm pretty sure that they made Casey Powell Lacrosse 2016, which I played, and that game it had a few bright spots, but for the most part, it was a lot less polished than this game is. I think this game is pretty polished. I mean, I don't know that they had facial scans of the players, but that probably reflects more on their access to the players than it does on the developers. I think that for what it is, it's a pretty good game. You know, if it's free and you want to play it, you want to play some tennis, I'd say go for it and give it a try. I think the area that this game really shines is online gameplay against players who are evenly matched and with a good connection, because a bad connection can really, really ruin the gameplay here. Uh, when you're playing AI, there's not a connection problem, obviously, because it's a local match. There's nothing to worry about, and I guess it would be the same if you played like a split screen match. But when you get into online gameplay, just a little bit of lag can sort of manifest itself in really weird ways with player movement and stuff. And I noticed it some with the shots because timing is very important on the shots in this game. And I found that my timing was a little messed up sometimes in online matches. And this connection that I have here in this match is pretty decent, I would say. It's all right, and it ended up being fine for what I needed, which was just playing the match and getting to the end of it. But I'll touch a little more on this match specifically in a second. But just back to where I think this game shines, I think that if you're playing online and you're playing against someone who's pretty evenly matched, like I think we were in this match, I think that the guy or girl that I was playing here is about my skill level. I would say we. I think early on in the match he was more consistent than I was with shots. Later on in the match, I think I got a little more consistent. And you can see that just from the fact that I was down 2-0 at the beginning. And you know from the video title that I end up winning. So that should tell you a little bit because online you play to 3 games. So 3 games win by 2 with a tiebreaker if you get to 4-4. When you have a really evenly matched opponent, it's almost like a game of chess where you are constantly, of course you have to execute, you have to have good timing on your shots. I mean, you don't have to. You can survive without it, but it certainly is a lot easier if you have good timing on your shots. And you're sort of thinking 1 or 2 shots ahead. You're thinking, okay, where do I want to place this shot so that I can get him off on his back feed, and where should I place this shot to make sure that he is not ready for it, and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit like chess, and I think it's fun, like I said, when you're evenly matched. But what I did find is that when I'm playing a guy who's a ton better than I am, it's just miserable. You're getting run around the court. You're just getting abused, which is not fun. I think when you're playing someone who's a lot better than you are, of course, you'd rather win than lose, but also it's not even really rewarding just to crush a guy online who doesn't really appear to know what he's doing. But when you have an even match, it's really quite fun. It really is. I think there are some things about this game that can be / are easily exploited. You probably see less of that online, but there are definitely certain shot combos that it's almost impossible to reach unless you are prepared for it. I'm thinking primarily here about the drop shot. If you're playing someone who can execute the drop shot pretty well, it's almost impossible to deal with. And that's somewhat true in real life as well, but also I think if you've ever played tennis, you know that even if someone is great with drop shots, if you are thinking about that and you're cognizant of it, you can certainly play against that. But in the game, if they get perfect timing on a drop shot, you have no hope. You have no chance. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but again, that could also go back, I think, to the player movement just being a little wonky. It could be better, I think. But I think there's a really good basis for this game. I really do. I think that, like I was saying, things that can be exploited, especially against the AI. I mean, the AI, I find, is either just completely incompetent at the lowest levels, just absolutely incapable of doing anything, as opposed to as you go up, they just sort of become machines. They can't mess up. And you have to hope that you get a good shot combo, or you're just playing a lowly rated opponent. And I think to a certain extent that is how it works, right? Better opponents play better, but also some of these guys are machines. So, but on the lower levels, which I think is where most people play when you are working on platinum trophies or just grinding out a career mode or whatever, the AI is just, they're terrible. They're absolutely just miserable players. Which is useful, I guess, if you're trying to grind through it, but not so useful if you're looking for good competition. So I really just think that overall this game is fine. I'm not going to give it a number rating. I think that's difficult. I think that I like the game. I did find that it got repetitive, or that it's getting repetitive, I should say. I'm still working on the platinum trophy, and I'm not really close. So We'll see if I continue and persevere and do that. I don't know that I have the spirit to do it, but um, I might try. I guess my final verdict would be if you have interest in playing a tennis game, give it a try. It's one of the better ones I can remember playing. And I probably have rose-colored glasses for Top Spin 3 from way back in the day, especially the graphics. I don't think they would hold up in today's compared to today's games. But it's a game that I think you will probably like somewhat if you were into tennis. If you're not, then it's you might not enjoy it. I don't know. If you don't have any interest in tennis, I would probably suggest you not play the game. If you do have some interest in tennis, then who knows, you might like it. So that's my thoughts on the game. I do want to get into the gameplay a little bit here, and also I will correct myself. I misspoke earlier and said that you can go to 4-4 in online matches. That's not the case. You play to 3 games. So, for instance, if you win the first 3 games, you win 3-0, you win. That's it. It's over. If you and you have to win by 2, so you could win 3-1, you could win 3-0. You cannot win 3-2. You have to win by 2 games. So, in this case, as you can see, just looking at this, we got to 3-3, and we're doing a tiebreaker here. And I will say what I did, I didn't show you the first 2 games here because, frankly, I got my butt kicked. And I think it might have been good to see just so you have some context for what it looks like when I'm losing, but also I think it was a more manageable video length if I just sort of cut that down a little bit, so I decided to cut it down a little bit. Fought back really hard, really excited to get it back to 3-3 and give myself a chance. And we're now going through a tiebreaker. So the way a tiebreaker works, if you're not familiar with tennis, is basically you play to 10 points. And throughout the game, you alternate back and forth with serving and the side of the court that you're on. So as you're watching right this second, he's up 4-1, and we're playing to 10, and you have to win by 2. So this is a really, I mean, if this match was happening in real life, everybody would be excited and enjoying it. Federer and Nadal taking it to a tiebreaker. So this is good stuff right here. And I was really proud of the way that I played later in the match, getting myself some consistent shots, some better timing, and there were a couple really nice placements that I was very proud of. There were a couple really ugly shots that you've seen, and that's just me not being very good. But I've also had some pretty good shots that I'm pretty proud of. So at this point, I'm actually down 5-2 here. And that's not good, you know. He's 5 points away from winning. I'm 8 points away from winning. So I really have to try to get it together and come back a little bit. And sort of what I was talking about, how the highlights of this game are really online matches against people who are evenly matched. I did feel like this guy was pretty evenly matched with me. I felt like he made a few mistakes down the stretch with some double faults that you wouldn't want to do, obviously. But for the most part, we were pretty evenly matched. And I think one really cool thing in real life tennis, you see this, but you also see it a little bit in the game, is that you start to pick up on patterns of the opposing players. You start to see what they do in certain situations. You start to see how they like to play certain shots. And if you are lucky / good enough to pick up on that, then you can then maybe build your strategy around that. I don't know that I necessarily picked up on any habits or anything of this guy. I think just as we went through the match, and here's kind of showing off the dispute function where you can challenge calls, which is pretty cool. I don't think it's ever worked for me, but it has worked for the AI before, so I guess it could work. But it's kind of a cool little feature there. And I will say the game looks pretty good. The player models are not brilliant, and the umpires and stuff don't have a lot of life, but it's a decent looking game, and it's a PS4 game. It's not a PS5 game. It's a PS4 game, but it looks pretty good. But we're at this stage of the match where my heart's beating pretty fast. I'm concerned about winning and trying to get this through. And honestly, part of that was because I wanted content. It's just it's a lot easier to show a match that you win than it is to show a match that you lose. even if it's a spirited effort. But if I'd like to really put a win on the tape and show you guys. I don't necessarily know that I'm going to be having much more Tennis World Tour 2 content. I think I put 30 or 40 hours in it, something like that. I think at this point I might finish the platinum and be done with it. But honestly, I think if any of my friends who play decided to get it either for free on PS Plus or otherwise and said, "Hey, you want to play this with me?" I mean, I would be down to put some matches on, because like I said, I think that's the gem of it. Really, is the online play. And I think if by chance you happen to have a couple friends who really enjoy this kind of thing, it might be really fun to get together and play it, assuming that you're pretty evenly matched. So my opponent actually quit there. I'm up 8-6 in the tiebreaker, and I guess he could see the end was near, and he quit. So it probably would have been sweeter if he'd stuck around to the finish, but it did give me the option to play against an AI for the end of it, and I certainly didn't want to exit and lose this win because I felt like it was a really enjoyable win, a really good match that I really enjoyed. I want to see it through the finish, so I ended up playing the AI here for the very end, and I had a two-shot advantage going into that, so AI gets a point. I pretty quickly got a point right there, so I'm up 9-7, very close to sealing this with the win. And I've had a few other online matches that were pretty good, but just didn't work out for me or weren't quite as exciting as this one was. So I thought this would be a good one to show you guys. And that was just a beautiful backhand cross court that I ended the match on right there. Really great way to win, really satisfying. You see some of this post-match activity here, which is, I think, nicely done. But look, guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a little bit about the game. Hopefully you enjoyed me watching me get this online win. Let me know if you have any questions about the game.